I don't know if you can see this, hopefully not, but I'm freaking out a little now. And there are two reasons for this. The first one is this is the first time I'm talking about this. And while I'm no stranger to the, giving talks, because I used to be on every major Polish IT conference back in the days, I usually gave talks that I could, produce evidence to, meaning, low-level Java talks. So I could just write a code and prove everyone that what I'm telling is right. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I think I might have overdid it a little bit with this presentation. I've been to a lot of great presentations today, and I've heard people talking about UX, design, research, about no-code, about stuff like this. And I'm here standing in front of you, and I'm going to talk about management and organizations. That's, yeah, I have one fan at least, but hopefully more of you will join. But, I'm freaking out a bit because this is going to be quite abstract, but also I think it actually affects every single person working in an organization, meaning whether you're a designer, developer, program manager, or product manager, it affects you as well, the way we work, the way we cooperate, and the processes that surround us. And so the question for today is what happens when an engineer, meaning me, ex-engineer, manages a product organization. My name is Dubiel, as already introduced, and I'm a Chief Product and Technology Officer at XTB, Polish fintech and investment company. So what I'm going to talk today about is what it takes to build a great product and engineering org. And you will see throughout the presentation that I'm going to mix product and engineering all the time, because I think this is like well, you will see why. This is really critical. So I have this framework in my mind, and it's about processes, structure, and culture. But before I continue, a disclaimer, because, oh, okay, something's messed up. So before I continue, a small disclaimer. This talk is not about delivering unquestionable truths. It's about my opinions, experience, intuitions, things like this. So that's why I'm freaking out, because I cannot test it. I can only prove it with my experience. So once again, what it takes to build a great org? Well, it depends, basically. So it depends on what you want to achieve. And there is this one key question that I've used to answer, but also ask a lot. And the question is, what are we optimizing for? So depending on the result that you want to get, you need to take different steps. And for the purpose of this talk, and for the purpose of companies that I want to build, and my style of management, what I want to have is a company, an organization that delivers results, that is scalable, and that people basically like to work at, meaning we have high engagement. So I will focus on those. And of course, you see those are no KPIs. I cannot put a label to this. Well, maybe if I tried, I could. I could do some surveys. I could see how well we deliver. But I also strongly believe that when you build a team, a small team or a bigger team, you're not building it just to make it work for one project. You're building it to make it work for years on different projects, different products. It's more about people themselves than about the projects. So that's why, sorry, there's going to be no KPIs today. And what's really hard about this, except for lack of KPIs sometimes, is that the feedback loop is so long. And I used to be an engineer, like software engineer writing code. And feedback loop was like minutes. So every time I sat down and started writing code, bang, bang, something's up on production. It works, great. The dopamine rush, I'm happy. Another 10 minutes pass, it's there. Then for even product managers or UX designers, you create something, and maybe after 2 weeks or a month or 3 months, it's there, it's out there. You get feedback from the customers, you've done something. Well, for me, it looks like this. I start some kind of a change, organizational change, and then I wait a year and see if it breaks or if it works. So, that's hard. But anyway, feedback loops are also very important, and I'm going to talk about them a bit later. So let's get back to my framework. How to think about building product and engineering organizations. So I have those three pillars in mind. The first one is processes. the second one is structure, and the third one is culture. And the tricky part about them is that you cannot just pick one and start working on it and then pick the other one. They need to be changed at the same time, at the same pace. And then you get the sweet spot, hopefully, which is going to be, in my opinion, what is a great org. So let's start with the processes. And I know this is a scary word for everyone, like, whoa, processes. We're going to start with Excel sheets and stuff like this. Well, I think this is a huge misconception about processes and about people that are actually introducing processes to the companies that they don't know when to stop. And I love this meme of how, very simple solutions and very exquisite solutions are very close to each other. So, and when we start introducing processes, sometimes we end up in the middle of this Gauss chart, meaning, you get this AI-created Jira's tasks, whatever. It's not about this. Processes are not about making more busy work. The processes, they don't replace the communication, or shouldn't. The processes should structure it. Okay? So unstructured communication is a mess. But when we start applying some processes, we can structure it, just not overdo it. So what are the conversations that we need to have in order to have a nice organization? Well, first and foremost is what are we building and why are we doing this? So start with why, or what are we optimizing for? Secondly, how do we want to build this? Like, what are the tools at our disposals and what are we doing? How do we know that we're building the right things, meaning the feedback loops and the plan? What do we want to achieve today, tomorrow, and later? I'm going to talk about this framework a bit later. But first, let's start with how the communication cascades in the organization. So the first approach, like, the natural one, is that, there's a simple hierarchy here. Like, someone is at the top, and there are some teams and departments. And the first one is just talk with everyone and tell them your version, and then they take their teams, tell them their version, and, just cascade. So that's one approach. And it works fairly well for, for everyday work. But there is one big risk here. If you stop here, what's going to happen is at some point, your organization will lose track of what is the truth. Because every single person in this hierarchy has some kind of an agenda, some kind of a filter. I'm not speaking about malicious stuff. I'm just speaking about normal people behaviors. So if I'm building payments, I'm going to filter this message and talk about payments only. Or, just focus on them. So if you only cascade information, you're not going to get this kind of a feeling of building something together. That's why you need some kind of a broadcast system. So you need to make sure that people hear the same version about what we're doing and why. And in my case, my organization is 450 people. And every 2 months, we have this all-hands meeting or town hall meeting or whatever you want to call it. Basically, everyone's sitting on Zoom for 1 hour, sorry, Google Meets, for 1 hour. And, there's Q&A, but there's also me starting my presentation with our values and with what we are doing and why we are doing it. Because I need to make sure that even if you've heard it for the 5th time, you remember, our goals. So there is one single source of truth in the organization, and then we can cascade as much as we want. And this cascade is important because once we have this, fundamental broadcasted message, then we can add local features to it. Meaning, if I'm in payments team, I'm going to talk about vision, and then I'm going to also add something about payments, because this is what we do every day, and I'm focused on it. So every organization is going to have its, global, but also more localized messages. I know it looks like a 5-year-old draw it, but, that's my graphic skills, so you're welcome. And after we had these conversations about why and how, we need to plan. And this is one of the most critical, processes in the company, because at some point you want to deliver. And I love this framework of today, tomorrow, later. Of course, in corporate terms, it's like this quarter, next quarter, and later. So why is it so powerful? Because it shows us that there are 3 layers of focus. So first and foremost, whenever you end a meeting, you need to know what's the action point, what I'm going to do immediately after. Okay, so this is this quarter. This is what I'm doing now, what I'm focused on. But if you only stop on today, on this quarter, you will lose sight of the broader horizon of things, like why are we doing this in the first place? So that's why you always need to think about what's coming next. Then you can align your actions, you can start preparing, and do things. So we have those, the first step, and then the second step. And later is scary. It doesn't say how much in the future it goes. Later. So it's my vision. It's something that I would like to achieve at some point in time. I don't know, maybe 3 quarters, maybe 4, maybe never. But I have something that drives me and my team forward. And it will change in time, but this is my vision. This is something that we all want to achieve. And later is very, very scary because, if you ask project management people about later, they're like, oh my God, later meaning when? Today, tomorrow, when? When? I need to know when. And one of the caveats when you start doing planning is that you start planning for the absolute certainty. Okay, you need to tell me what you're going to deliver on 15th of May. I don't know, something. So don't plan for the certainty because you're going to spend so much time on it and probably the results are going to be very, very poor. Instead, plan some for predictability. And in my case, what I always say is that I would like my organization to be able to deliver 80% of their plans. 80% in tech and product, I mean, that's a lot. There's so much chaos going on that that's a lot. But it's still predictable. It feels like we achieved something that actually can trust us. And there is also this margin of error, which is critical, because if you want people in your organization to be empowered, you need to give them some place for trade-offs, for errors. And this 20% is the perfect margin for it. So is this 80% actually a good number? I don't know. I mean, I just made it up. It felt right because of Pareto. But, I think it's a good thing to aim for. And if you want to aim for predictability, your team's capacity is the biggest variable. And you've probably been through this, working in one of those teams. So let's say you have 3 teams here, 1, 2, and 3. And each of them has their goals, okay? When I have a goal as a team, I'm focused. I just want to deliver it. But when you do any kind of complex products, well, let's say XTB platform is created out of 40 different teams. And to achieve something big, we need to cooperate. So what's going to happen is that there's going to be dependencies between the teams. And that's fine. It needs to be like this. But the problem is when the dependencies are getting done in the meantime. The magical meantime. I planned my sprint, and there in the meantime, I'm going to do this and this. That's fine to some extent, but at some point, most of your work can be done in the meantime. And that's a problem. And this is a problem which a lot of planning processes don't actually address because they are focused on one team and their deliverables, not on the broader picture. So good planning is about unraveling those complexities and dependencies between teams, but also having a lot of difficult conversations. So once again, processes are about communication and how to make the planning actually work for you. Well, first and foremost, be out in the open about your needs. Like in any relationship, if you don't speak about your needs, about what you want from others, they will not know. Maybe they will, figure it out, but usually not. Especially when you're in a company and everyone has their own goals. If a team 1 has their goal, they're going to be focused on it. They will not listen to what you're saying. So even if you have 10,000 meetings, and on every meeting you're going to say, hey, I'm building this stuff, no one's going to be there to connect the dots. They will not ask, hey, maybe I can help. No, they have their own goals. That's why you need to be very explicit about it. And don't assume anything is obvious. Nothing is obvious. What I like to have in the processes, and it's scary at first for people, is that there needs to be some space to haggle. So if you have 2 teams, 2 different product managers, and they need to be able to come to terms or to negotiate how they will work. They will haggle. So maybe I can deliver something faster, maybe I can reduce the scope, anything. But first, give them space to haggle between themselves before there is an escalation. Of course, escalation is nothing bad. So escalations will happen, but the priority or the concept is for people to solve their problems locally instead of management going in and solving everything for them. This is about empowerment. So giving space to haggle is empowerment. Of course, there's going to be some escalations. And the most stupid thing to do when somebody comes to you and say, OK, we cannot figure out, is to say, oh, I don't know, figure it out on your own, just do both. Everything's equally important. That's not true. In any organization, that's not true. So as management teams, you always have to be prepared to decide what is more important. Like, if people come to you with a problem, you need to say, hey, this is more important than this. And maybe some feelings will be hurt, but without this, we're going to just drift apart. So that's the most important thing here. But, when people have, the interesting thing is that when people have this space to haggle and to talk about problems on their own level, actually almost nothing gets escalated. Because people want to find a way. They want to, make it work. They are friends, so they will help each other. So very few things escalate. If there is a lot of escalations, maybe there's something not really working with the company culture. Maybe you don't empower your people enough. Maybe they cannot make decisions. But if they can, there are mostly no escalations. And important thing, after you've done with all the planning, make sure that you have a feedback loop. So I've told you about this 80% of predictability. That wasn't just a number for me to put there. It was there also as kind of our aim and target. And if we have aim and target for the whole planning system, then we can see whether we did it or not. And I think this is something that's sometimes amiss, and people are afraid to do so, meaning they are afraid to actually, at the end of the quarter, to say, we did this and this and this, and this we did not deliver. Because, maybe you'll get fired or something. It's not about firing people, it's not about this, it's about accountability. So we want to empower people, we want to give them responsibilities, but hey, you're accountable for your actions and decisions. So always have a feedback loop. For me, this high-level feedback loop is this 80% predictability. Oh, OK. And once you start with it, it kind of grows on the organization and on you, and it becomes an ongoing process. So you always have this planning, you always have the check, and you always have this place where you work. And the beauty of it, combined with the today, tomorrow, later, is that people think not only about the current quarter, but the next quarter, and they prepare. Sometimes it's going to legal, sometimes it's figuring out something with the marketing team, but you prepare. You don't come to the quarter unprepared. You had a lot of time to do it beforehand, because you've been thinking about it for a long time. Oof, the processes. Now let's talk a bit about the structure. As I've already said, those things are interconnected. So, when I was talking about processes, there was a bit about structure and vice versa. But the structure is the other thing that, it really drives our companies. And once again, let's remind ourselves of what are we optimizing for. Scalable org. So the structure I'm going to show you is something that makes the organizations, in my opinion, scalable, and also in my experience. So once again, this hierarchy, whatever, some teams. The most important thing in any organization is not the management, are not directors, no C-level. Those are the teams. And what is the team? For me, this is the basic building block of any organization. And the companies exist, they exist to make revenue, build products, stuff like this. But then we have all the management, all the processes, only so that people doing the actual job, meaning designers, developers, product people, that they have space to do it, and they have this place to do this all in a nice environment. So this is the most important thing. And remembering about it, it kind of, humbles you, because I'm not there to manage people. I'm here to empower them and to give them space to work, because without them, the company doesn't exist. So this is the most important. And I'm highlighting this product and engineering, and you're going to see why. It doesn't matter if you have this structure with CTO and CPO, or as we have at XTB, CPTO structure where product and technology is in one place. It doesn't matter much as long as you get the engineering teams right or the product team right. What I mean by this is the basic structure. You have engineers, full stack, front end, whatever, but all the specialties. You have product manager, and you have the UX. And with this, you can conquer the world. And we're all there to help them do their job. This is our role. So, and to have them working together on the same incentives means that they need to be evaluated on the same terms, meaning same goals, same KPIs. I don't want to hear from the engineers that, hey, we've met our SLAs, but the product is not there. I don't want to hear from the product managers that we had everything in place, the marketing, the legal team, the engineers didn't deliver. I mean, those are just excuses. They share their work, but they also share their rewards, but they also share their KPIs and goals. And with this, the engineers will start to try and find the way how to build the product. The product manager will start to find a way how to help engineers, and so on, so on. So, no pointing fingers, just working together as one team. And that's critical for me. Of course, the structure is a bit more complicated, but that's a topic for another talk. But then there is one thing. We said about optimizing for scale. So that's fine if you have 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams, but when you have 40 teams, or 50 or 60 teams? Well, in order to be able to work on the product, on the UX, on an engineering part, you need to set some standards. That's one thing. And then you also need to delegate the responsibilities. So we're not building those, we're not hiring a lot of talented and wise people with huge experience to tell them what to do. Well, of course, we're going to set the direction. I'm going to set the direction. My manager's going to set some directions. But those people, they need to be empowered to make their own decisions on a daily basis. And it's not only about product managers or the UX, it's about engineers as well. Because you know what? Surprise, surprise. The engineer typing the code is actually doing the, making all the decisions about how the product's going to work like. Whatever product manager does or the UX, it's an idea, it's a direction, and then the engineer needs to turn this idea into code. So they also need to be fully involved in the product process to understand it, because they're making hundreds of small decisions every day. And standards, well, to make it all scalable, you need to have those standards. So, technical standards, but also product standards and UX standards. Like, how does our cooperation process look like? How our development process looks like? How do we achieve consistency of our application? Like, make sure that we actually use the same design system and stuff like this. So that's all very important. And for this, you need to have very, very strong leaders. If you have only weak leaders in your organization, like somebody that's afraid to take the challenge, you will not achieve good standards, because to create standards, well, you need to first and foremost negotiate them and do some compromises. And not everyone's going to be happy with standards, because some people will say, hey, you're actually, I wanted to, let's say, code in, I don't know, Haskell, and you're not allowing me to do this. That's fine. This is the organization's choice. You need to have strong leaders to do this. And it all now leads us to the part of the culture. So, once again, what are we optimizing for here? For high engagement. But I've been talking a lot about stuff like, shifting left, about empowerment, about making sure that people can make their own decisions. So those are also all part of the culture. And you can see how processes and structure starts to reinforce this high engagement, how they reinforce the culture. So if we put it all together, what we're going to get? We're going to get the ownership. this is the magic ingredient that I always look for in the companies, in the organizations, and in people in those organizations. And this is the ownership. And like, you can lack other qualities, but ownership is crucial. Why? Because it means that I don't have to look over your shoulder to make sure that what you did or your job, you're doing your job correctly. You own your mistakes, you own your job, you want to do it. And I recently, like last week, I heard this great definition of ownership. One of the developers told me, what is ownership? I wrote this, if I fucked up, I need to fix this. It doesn't matter if I fix it at 2 a.m. because it broke, during the night. I simply need to fix this. I am the owner of this part. And it goes to lines of code, it goes to products, it goes to the whole organizations. So, we need ownership. Of course, there are more values that we're looking for, like, communication, teamwork, and those are actually the values that I always present to my team during those, all hands meetings as part of a broadcast. But I think the ownership is something that we're looking for to the highest extent. And, well, yeah, whatever those values are, make sure that they are actually communicated to the whole team, via your broadcast system, whatever it is, whether it's a small team or is a big team. So, because so far I've been talking about kind of a big organizational setup, but if you're leading even a smaller team, like, 5 people, 3 people, 4, there is one question that you should also ask yourself and your team. What kind of team do we want to be? And this is where you start with building your values. Do we want to be a team where people feel, like, where we prioritize delivery over quality? Maybe that's the right answer, just making stuff up. But anyway, that's the most important thing to do. And once you set this up, like the values, make sure you broadcast them regularly. It's never enough of it. And another important thing is that, as usually, actions speak louder than words. So even if you talk about those values, if you're not going to follow up on them with your actions, people are just going to say, okay, another part of like corporate talk. I don't care. And that's why it's good to publicly recognize and acknowledge people that are following those values. And the concrete example is a process of recognitions that we're doing. And what does it mean? It means that we're looking throughout the organization, like, via leaders, for everyday heroes. We're not looking for superstars here. This is not about finding the best developer in the company and making sure that he feels recognized or she feels recognized. It's actually about finding everyday heroes, people that just, don't change the whole company. Maybe they don't even change their own department or their team, but they're there, they're showing the values, that they follow our values, and if they do so, acknowledge it. In my practice, it's about, during the town hall meetings, we spend 10, 15 minutes of actually, like, reading out loud names of people that we feel like, recently have shown behaviors that embody our values. And it's also not about handing them a pile of cash. So it's not about, prices, money prices. They actually can get a book or something, like, small gestures, but they matter. People feel like they've been recognized. Hey, I'm here. Thank you for noticing me. Thank you for, seeing how much I care about the company. Just making sure that you recognize them. But also, the critical part is, it sounds easy, but the critical part is make sure that you recognize the right people. You will make mistakes. People will not be happy. But anyway, even on a team level, recognize the right people. And so we have this trio of process, 3 pillars: process, structure, and culture that need to work together. So with processes, what we do is we try to structure the communication, not kill it. With structure, we need to make sure that people are aligned on the same goals and the same targets, and that they can work together. And culture is, is this thing of how we feel about our company, how we want to work with it. And that sounds all easy, right? I mean, simple framework, just 3 things to get right. That's super easy. And, like, with this, you should be able to kind of arrive at this kind of organization. Well, then if it's so easy, why people do not arrive at this kind of organizations? Well, because the knowledge, you can read all the coaching books in the world, you can get to hundreds of presentations. I can see that it's actually not readable. I love this meme, so, okay, I'll just read it to you. It will be a bit quirky. So, I'm a seasoned leader delivering great products and results. Please be honest. I was even invited to write this article on LinkedIn together with other special professionals. Be honest. I just saw a bunch of presentations. So this is what you need to watch out for, not to become like this Victoria from this thing. Meaning, hearing and getting the knowledge is not the same as trying, as inventing, as making errors. And as with any software, with any product, you need to get to the production as fast as possible in order to get feedback. And it's the same with making changes in the organization, building the organizations, building teams. You need to start doing it, not being afraid to do so, not asking millions of questions, just start doing it, get feedback, and get better. And only with this, you will be able to build it. And so, what's the first step? So my idea is that you have this, if you're working in a startup environment, you know that ideas are cheap for venture capitalists. Like, ideas, everyone can have an idea. Execution matters. And this context of this talk, knowledge is actually cheap. Like, we have abundance of knowledge. But the execution is what matters. So we can take the same knowledge, apply it different ways. You might screw up. How not to screw it up? Well, choose your values and choose them wisely, because they will describe how your organization will work in the future. Make sure that the processes, the structures that you're building, they optimize for them. So the key question is, what are we optimizing for? If we know this, then we can start shaping the processes, always having in mind what are the values you optimize for. And of course, create feedback loops. Talk with your people, have some engagement surveys, just see the results in order to make changes to what you've just created. That was all from me for today. It was lovely talking to you. I'm a little bit less freaked out now, so I might be even able to take some questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It was great and very concise. Do we have questions? I will run to you with microphone. Don't be scared, please.
Anything. I will answer anything.
Adam, do you see anybody? It's super bright, right?
It's bright, but yeah, just one.
Oh, there it is.
Good. There always has to be someone, to start the conversation.
All right, so how the goals are set for the teams and how they are transferred into the requirements?
Sorry, I think I need to stand here. Can you repeat this?
Okay, so how the goals are set and how they are transferred, like goals for the teams, and then transferred to the specific requirements. Like in the Jira, finally you need some acceptance criteria.
Yes.
But they are like covering some goals, and I'm like interested on the transfer of the goals, like how they are set, how they are transferred to the bottom level of someone who is going to achieve them.
Okay. So, so we're building this kind of a KPI tree, meaning start with the high-level KPIs and then go downward, with more detail for each team. So I would like to, for each product team, to have, like product and engineering team, to have their own set of KPIs for their product, because they're building something. So that's one thing. So this will not set the goals. I will set the goals in form of the KPIs. So then you can use OKRs or something like this to actually work on those. So this gives you empowerment. So I tell, okay, just make the conversion go up by 10%. And this is not like a stupid example. This is actually one of our goals. Like the number is different, but whatever. So that's one thing. But then the other thing, there are some visions. Like, okay, what type of company do you want to be? What type of products do you want to have? And those are the decisions that we do on a kind of a higher level. management level. And then once we have them, okay, how do they translate to our current state? And what I believe is that you always need to have one person responsible for this. And then they will go around the company asking questions, making sure that it's getting done, and then this will translate in the requirements. But I think the most important thing is that you just don't throw it in the air and say, hey, let's build a multi-currency card. We're releasing it next month. It's not like this. It's like you pick a team, you pick a person. Okay, you're responsible for this. This is your job now. And just tell me what you need to make it happen. And and then it's like operational stuff, and it actually works. So yeah.
I have next person here.
Great, the conversation started.
Hi, thanks a lot for a great presentation. I have a question regarding your experience and the challenges you might still experience with your knowledge and expertise and all those years of working. If yes, what are those challenges?
There's a lot of challenges.
Thanks.
I have those days when I wake up and I think I should have stayed a developer, just code every day and just whatever. Why did I do it to myself? And it was the same with this presentation, actually. I was like, why did I agree to this? But now I'm great. I'm really happy about it, but Anyway, so when it comes to challenges, I think one of the biggest ones is the feedback loops, meaning I have to, it's not only me, but okay, the question was to me. I find it hard that I have some opinions and experience, and I'm acting on it, and I know that my actions will impact a lot of people because there's a big organization, and maybe I will screw something up. And the biggest problem for me is that the feedback loop is so long. And because usually when you introduce some change, what's going to happen? Half of the people will say that they don't like it because it's a change. They've been used to something else, so they don't like the new thing. So you need to wait through this, see if they accommodate, then see whether you get the results. And it takes, I think for our planning process, it took like half a year to see that it actually started working. And but then you have to go with the absolute confidence and say, this is how we're going to work. While inside I'm like, oh my God, is it going to work? I don't know. So yeah, this is the biggest challenge.
I saw you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. My question is, how would you introduce that three-pillar model into an organization that is very resistant to it, already established, like a kind of a big whale out there that is resistant to change?
So except for the resistant to change part, I've just had this challenge because I joined XTB a year ago and I started doing just this. So I think so there's one thing that I would say is the most important. We could talk about this for an hour, but I think one thing is the most important is that you need to be respectful to things that were already achieved at the company. And, just don't come guns blazing and say, whatever you did was wrong, this is the right way. You need to be respectful, listen to people first, and then only start giving them ideas about how to change stuff. At some point, you will need to say, okay, this is my way of doing things, but it really helps if you're respectful and if you respect their, legacy. Because you usually join a company that's established, that's very big, that has some successes. You cannot just say, you did it all wrong. So I would say this respect is one thing, and then being relentless. And relentless meaning whenever you see something that doesn't work, or not work, but that someone is trying to work the other way, just say, hey, sorry, this is not what we agreed to. Because if you're not going to be relentless about this, people are, they're just going to, okay, thank you for the presentation, now we're going to do our own thing. No, you have to have processes and feedback loops to see that they actually follow what you've told them. So that's two things. Something else? Okay, great.
Yeah, I would like to ask you about the part for when you presented short-term vision and long-term vision and the future. Yeah, what in the situation when you work in an organization when teams, and especially business teams, are looking on a very delivery topics instead of future vision, yeah? And if you are talking about a future vision, they are asking you about a specific period, yeah, of the time when this future, what this future means. So how to change their mindset and encourage them to follow the vision, yeah? Also from the like normal employee perspective, not the very high level.
So I'm smiling because I have very unpolitical answer to the second part of the question, meaning when they ask for dates, I just give them something. I mean, if it's going to be 9 months from now, things will change anyway. So I'm telling, okay, yeah, this is my vision for like next 9 months. I have no idea if it's 9 months, but they want a date. I'm just telling them, and it works. I mean, it's and usually, like, you know, if you have intuition, you're kind of correct if you look back at it. So it works, so it always depends on who's on the other side of the table. Like, you know, different people might have different, like, you know, some people might just not want to work like this. But what worked for me is that I'm trying to build a relationship and become a partner and show that I can bring some value to the table. Because, like, what I've seen is that, for example, like from technology perspective, like you go to the table and say, I demand a seat here and I'm important, and you know, there are 10 business people, and you start talking about SLAs and databases. I mean, you know, okay, they're gonna nod their heads because they're polite, but they're not gonna listen. So first step is to show that you provide some value, meaning, okay, like build the trust by, I don't know, actually explaining them in simple terms what you do, show them roadmaps, show that you deliver. And once you have this trust, this kind of like, you know, and it might take like 3 months or 4 months because you need to deliver something, you need to, you know, become battle tested with them, work hand by hand. But once you do, the conversations are really, really easier. So, you know, I think it's all about communication and relationships. So, you know, once again, execution matters. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. I'm going to be somewhere here, so just come up and we can talk.